This is the Dope Black Dad podcast. My name is Marvyn Harrison. Today I'm joined by wonderful friends. What's really beautiful is that I've now made this my home. I've adopted this country, that on the country has adopted me, but I've adopted it. And as a part of that, some of the people that I've met here, we've done some incredible stuff. We've spent some amazing time together. We're now in this space for our first podcast of the year, our first visual podcast of the year in Johannesburg. I'm joined by the Thabo. The Lebo. And I don't know how to say your name properly with the full chest.
The Kagiso.
Because he gave it, and look, my anglicized tongue, we have to really honor the fact that we have come from a very marginalized place that reduces your ability to connect with your authentic African self. And so how I say things doesn't give it a gravity. I don't want to do you a disservice. So I want you to say it with the energy that it deserves, and I will try to mirror it and honor you properly.
My name is Kagiso. Kagiso, which means peace. What comes with peace?
Now, just to address the elephant in the room, you feel peaceful to me. So I feel like you've been appropriately named.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna honor that. But like today, we're all here together. And what's really beautiful is like I was here a year ago and we experienced the loss of one of our members. And I really wanted to talk to Lebo first about one of our members that we lost, but in generally, how we deal with loss and some of our wins that we've had throughout the last calendar year. Lebo, do you want to give context to Wandile that we can honor?
Yeah. Wendy was like, he invented culture. He crawled so a lot of people could walk today. And he was the most giving person of himself. He made, speaking about it on radio today, he elevated intimacy and always found a way to insinuate himself in your life so that you can't imagine your life before you met him. It just feels like there's someone who's just always a part of your life. And he had that relationship with everybody, which was quite remarkable when Wendy passed. And the stories that people were sharing about Wendy was like, wow, they're also similar, So he had those unique bonds with so many people. Lost him to COVID, and it's a year later. And I think the crazy thing about this time in history is that because at that moment there was so much loss that we never had an opportunity to like properly deal with it. Loss was always such a sort of like aberration, but in that moment it felt so like normal and so routine, sending condolence messages. So we've got an entire sort of society that like won't be able, like we can't fathom the trauma that we went through collectively because it was just so crazy, the scale of the loss. And I think that we're gonna need to find a way to like heal from this moment. And I think it'll probably only take us maybe like, 10, 15 years to like look back and be like, wow, that was a crazy, crazy time where people weren't, People were just like numbers, people were just like stats, people were percentages, And I think that a lot of people, lost loved ones, but they became just another number in the news. So that was the kind of like sort of at an individual level, you lose someone, but at a broader level, you are like one of many people that has lost someone. So it was just such a crazy time.
What was nice is I think that we were able to honor him, and I think like. Around about that time, there was a lot of loss in general, as you mentioned. And it was kind of just like what does this mean a little bit? Because it's so hard to mourn when a day later, somebody else, 2 days later, somebody else was on the news. I think last year, like from London perspective, we're quite US centric anyway. But I think in like a month, it was like Shock G, DMX, Black Rob. That was like March. And you're like, I grew up listening to those people and watching those people and like connecting with them with their art. Then in our real lives in January, we lost about 3 people. I know I lost 3 people. Throughout the last 6 months of the year, I lost another 7 people. So I'm just going through this time and I realized I never even bothered to mourn any of it. It was like, as soon as I felt something, it was like, oh, there's another thing or there's something else to do. And there was a sort of collective mourning of just where we were. So it almost felt uncomfortable to sit there and be like, I'm gonna mourn this and I want space to mourn this because it was like so much going on everywhere. Did any of you feel that type of feeling?
Yeah, mourning became, for the past 2 years, it became tragic because now it became like a prepaid, something on the shelf. You pick up something, you mourn, you do whatever. As you say, one day, today it's an anniversary of his death. You know, you were speaking with him on the other day, now he's gone. While you were still trying to digest his passing as a friend, suddenly there's other people that are either close or far away. Now, statistically, you lose the connection and you focus on the stats. And you're more worried about, will I make it through this week? Because now it hits home. So we did not be able to, whether it's family, friends, partners, or any type of relations that you engaged with certain individuals, is that you are even scared for yourself. So the morning time is, or you receive the death and you just can't relate for 5 minutes and you break down. And you must take yourself up. While you're taking yourself up, it hits again that someone has passed away. So we became numbers than humans.
And I think another thing as well is that I guess what you could call the processes that were put in place to help people mourn death, which is, you know, you've got like a week in which everybody comes together and you like spend time together. All of that was taken away, so you didn't even have the ability to just go collectively with someone because I was now scared that like we might infect each other and I might infect you and I might, you know what I mean? So it was like brutally lonely.
Yeah, I think to your point, for me, what I actually struggled with a lot was the fact that you couldn't go through the prescribed normal processes of actually getting to mourn people, you know? And most of the time, obviously, with people dying at the height of COVID, you couldn't even go like pay respect like you normally would do. You know? So you had to sort of mourn at a distance, disconnected like from other people. You know, I mean, I know technology is an enabler, but like in a situation like that, especially as Africans, the way that we would normally show up for other people would be to physically be there and actually use acts of service to sort of support the people that are actually going through, you know.
Another thing I'm really worried, and we spoke about this earlier, just like the ability to share emotionally. And obviously we have our space, we do have those conversations in there. But like, what does it feel like? And can you even describe? Because I think sometimes from men, we don't get heard on how we feel. If we said we're gonna lead a nation somewhere, people are like, oh, maybe. Okay, let me have a listen. If you say, I'm sad, or I'm struggling, or I'm unhappy, do you think it lands? And how do people show up for you in those times, if at all? I have no idea.
If I'd come in there, remember it's prescribed and expected that we have many idioms culturally that say, "Monna Gingu doesn't cry," so you are a sheep. Everything else you express it. So COVID or the past 2 years, I think did allow or give men permission to say, can I please grieve? This is too much, you know? And while we as men were trying to say, we experience pain, it was then shunted by certain things that can put the cancel culture, feminism, never gave a man a voice, because now people say, but you've been men for all the lives. But throughout of our lives, no one has gave us to express the pain, because everything that a man is supposed to do, you're supposed to be the provider, the protector, the everything in your household or as a community. But you are not expected to be weak and down and grieve amongst the people that you love. You know, seeing someone at Wandi's funeral, some of us were there. It was very hard as a man to see a bulky man that I knew shedding a tear.
That was you. You're the bulky man. You're talking about yourself.
You know, yes. I'm lucky that at home, for crying, it was said you're allowed to cry. And there's another man, when Shona, if I'm diverting, you'll tell me, when Shona Ferguson cried, and I saw Tato Sekwane shed a tear, you know, if you see how gigantic the man is, and you realize that the relations and breaking down, they always say, Pula ihlatswa bubi. Then tears, when they come out, they wash the pain away and give you a rejuvenation as a man.
Yeah.
Do you cry in front of your children and your wives and your partners? Have they ever seen that side of you?
Probably 2 years ago.
2 years?
Wow.
Yeah.
You cried in 2 years?
Yeah.
Oh man, you need to cry, man.
But I think it was when it did happen. It was quite brutal. It was,
Yeah.
yeah. It was,
From 11 years on to that. Yeah.
No, man. I feel as though, like, to Kagiso's point, we've been carrying a lot, like, all these years, you know. So when something triggers those emotions, you're not only letting it out based off of, like, the situation that's in front of you. It's years and years of emotions that have been sitting there, and they catch you, like, all at once. You know, I think I had a bit of a meltdown. I think my wife probably like, she was probably shocked. You know, I probably cried for an hour.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's great. Yeah, I saw something like, it's reported that, like, suicide rate in South Africa has increased by 60%.
Damn.
And the majority of the people who commit suicide in South Africa is black men, right? So they're the most prominent. So if you think about what that tells you about the last 2 years, that men have gone through, like, immeasurable pain, and I think it is a confluence of, like, COVID, all the loss Kagiso was talking about, but also the loss of, like, resource, jobs. You know, I mean, you just walk around and you can see that, like, homelessness is, like, there's so many more homeless people. If you just look around you, it's crazy. So you've got men in the last 2 years that have lost income, that have lost people, and as a consequence of not having any spaces or channels to be able to express that, you know.
I'm curious because I resonate with that, and I know that to be true. And if I was to say, why are women not, because this is happening to them too, why is it not turning into the devastating act of suicide
for women?
Yeah. Well, just a view, we don't know, but, like...
Yeah, if I was to speculate, I think it is this kind of, let's call it a theory, that, like, you know, it's the strong woman theory, or the fallacy, whatever you want to call it, the notion that, like, women must be strong and they must carry and da-da-da-da-da, you know what I mean? Like, bear the emotional burden of society.
I think it's largely because of the fact that society gives women permission to actually express emotions when things are not going well. Right?
Yeah.
So obviously that takes off some of the load, and then you can sort of refocus energy and find the will to live. You know, whereas men, you then sit in your quiet corner, feeling shame, right? And then that then culminates into you not being able to express it, and then eventually when it does bubble to the surface, it results in things like.
So you're saying men are more likely to commit suicide than women because men don't have channels to express themselves emotionally, whereas society has given women a platform to express themselves. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
I'm partial to that theory.
Well, not necessarily that. Maybe society.
Maybe that's reductionist. But
yeah, but maybe society giving women permission is probably the wrong expression. But there's no shame around women expressing emotions that are generally associated with weakness when it comes to men, right?
So I'm not going to cancel you, Thabo. You're here now.
You can say that, but outside this room is
Thabo is saying, we need to look at our reality to understand. In our reality, a woman would meet up, whether there is going to mourn or bailolila, as a wailing, they're going to the deceased house, or when women meet, we can meet up as gents, not knowing each other, we can talk about things that are tangible, but women are likely to share non-tangible emotional stuff and come up with a solution there and there. You know, if you have not heard it, or you know, is that men gossip more than women, but women will share that pain, because a woman will come and they will meet up and say to the bereaved one, sorry, you've got a loss, and what? He says, Ish, I've got this loss, but this bloody bastard had girlfriends and what, and then they will all give her a certain advice of how to deal with it before the funeral, because she's sitting on the mattress and she says, who had girlfriends? They say, if he's got a baby child that out there, how we deal with it? Is we move out. Women will give that advice. You know, through loss, they'll find humor. Through loss, they'll find a connection and share vulnerability, because they know how to be vulnerable. But us will come and say, hey, I know Lebza's secret, but until he speaks about it, I won't talk about it as a man. You know, he won't share because he will be afraid that other men will.
Do you just think it's just the weight of expectation of what masculinity is? It's a very, and women have it in a different way, but the things that we have are usually external, very extrinsic things that we are measured on. And it's like the outcome of what we create is what's measured. And I think the consistent, strong woman at home is what is celebrated, like being that woman. And when you're, I think as men, we're operating in a world, we're like trying to create something. And if you look at key points and you can't provide, the shame, the weight of shame, like of not being able to provide, not being able to be strong at a time, not being able to create safety in a particular way. If something happens in your house and you couldn't protect your family, the weight of that shame, because almost like that's what you're here for. Like that's what you're good at. And I think, you know, I love our space because we speak and we say things that, so I cry often, usually by reading these things, because it just, I know, like I know it to be true. And I think internalizing hundreds of men for years, I know something's not right. But I think what we can raise our hand and be like, something isn't right here. But then I think now we then need to think, what do we do about it? I said this once, and it was to a woman, and it was a leap of understanding. But it was just like, when we talk about women's progression and we talk about men's progression, we regularly center men as having things right. Like what we got in the world is better. And it's almost like this ascension into closer to what we've done. Like, you know, career, money, wealth, you know, owning things. And we never talk about men being more emotionally available and better connected to our children, better connected to ourselves, being able to say to ourselves, something isn't right here, and making a pause. And I think in that, it's like, we're probably more trying to create a more feminine society than we are trying to create a more masculine one. But we're not doing the work in the feminine space with men. We're doing more masculinity work. And I think we're just disconnecting from each other when we do it. So it's almost like women are doing this over there, men are doing this over there, but somehow we have to cross over. But the focus is in like our own things. There is no community vision of what men and women should be coexisting as, and what actually is happening for us, and what we actually want to do, and who we actually want to be, and the freedom to be those people.
So here the clash comes, and which is, I can be cancelled. There was a contradiction that came. I'm a man. The only thing I know is to be a man, and I take instructions from the females around me, from my mother, my girlfriend, and my late partner.
Be careful.
So I used to take instructions from her. Everyone. When the house is led by a woman and it falls, it's very easy for people to make plan for it. But when a man that leads the house, can you imagine the story of Egypt? Moses, if he had failed to take the Israelites out of Egypt, it would have been another different conversation, you know. But because he succeeded, it will always be reminded that a man must be like Moses, you know. There is, I don't know if it was a feminist or this comedian, Felix Lope, said, how does a man who's unemployed sweat over a woman, you know? And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy trying to say? So if I'm unemployed, I must not have conjugal rights, you know? So it has become where being a man in this masculinity, trying to be feminist, it now becomes an economical thing. So which pains me as a man, if I'm not working, I'm experiencing trauma, I'm useless. That's how the society and feminism is describing me. Yeah.
So I think to answer you, Marvyn, men's intrinsic value is linked to capitalism, right? And to Kagiso's point as well, so everything that you sort of have to tick in terms of you being accepted by society has to do with having things, acquiring things, you know. And if you fail when it comes to those capitalistic items, you sort of don't see a need to then focus on the softer side. So a father who doesn't work suddenly doesn't see the need to actually be a present father and provide things that are not necessarily linked to money, because society doesn't necessarily glorify that.
So then in the archetype of masculinity, how close or how far away would you consider yourself as an individual from that vision? They're like, I provide, I'm the strength, I'm the wisdom, you know, I create the strategy for what we're doing. Yeah. Like how much of that versus, you know, a more balanced approach to it with your partner, would you say?
So part of the reason why I had the breakdown, the famous breakdown, was actually linked to that feeling of inadequacy, right? At the time, things were not going well, and as a man, as a husband, you obviously have a certain vision in terms of where you actually want to see yourself and family, and how you actually, because in the African context, when you marry someone, you're supposed to take them from where they are to sort of like a better place, right? So like it's a shitty feeling when you feel as though you're letting down the person that you've taken on this journey with, you know. So I think part of the reason was I was feeling a lot stagnant, and I felt as though I was actually letting her down, and then those emotions then.
Did she feel like you were letting her down, or was
not
that
at
just
all? I think
your own bullshit?
Exactly, it's because I never took the time to actually have a conversation with her to actually find out. So a lot of these negative thoughts we actually project onto ourselves, because we're so closed off. Like men you don't even see the need to sit down with your partner and actually like talk to them, find out where they are in terms of
yes, that goes back to Marvin's question about crying in front of your partner. But I've got a question for you guys, man. Okay, so we've been doing Dope Black Dads for like 3 years. Podcasts, we recorded 1,000 minutes podcasts, shared millions of words over text. Are you guys satisfied with like the conversation? Do you guys think the conversation is actually progressing? Like based on what we're talking about at the beginning of this thing, talking about masculinity, talking about female, the roles, do you guys think that the conversation is progressing? Do you find yourself having different conversations? Do you find yourself getting like a better understanding of things like vulnerability? Like, what's your
It's funny because, like, obviously as the founder, there's an element of setting the pace, and like you create the authenticity by being the authenticity of what's going on, and so. And also, I get sent a significant amount of more information. I get the good, the bad, and the ugly all sent to me directly in my phone every day. Whether it's like, I hate that podcast, that tweet was stupid, this moved me and made me cry. So also it's like, oh, the stats on men now on suicide. I just get sent this stuff every day and I'm ingesting it. So I would say the conditions are getting better. The conversations are much more healthier. I've had more conversations with men online and offline about given a shit about their actual self and how they feel than I ever have in my whole life, combined easily.
It's also the first time in history that the conversation has been incentivized, right? So the first time you actually feel like there's an actual benefit to having the conversation. And I guess maybe, yeah, and I think I've said this before, but it's the work of generations. I don't think we'll be able to see the benefit of these conversations in our lifetime. I think it's only our sons who are going to be like, there was a group of men that went out and started doing some stuff, and only, the trickle-down effect. Because I think it's like we said, 4 years of dope black dads measured up against hundreds of years of men being
going in the wrong direction,
emotionally absent, emotionally dead human beings, just kind of walking through as capitalist zombies. You know what I mean? So I think it's only now. So I think maybe it's something that I find encouraging. The reason I ask that is because sometimes I get frustrated. I'm like, we can't still be talking about the same stuff. And then you take a step back and you're like, oh my God, we've only been doing this for 4 years, And
I think and this is where I suppose, I'm a goer, doer, I'm like pushing forward. And what I've got to realize is I've been doing this for 4 years, but the conversation now still just lands with people for the first time today now. And there's a group of people who are like, what? I can talk about this. We've been talking about it for 4 years. Where we're at now is and I'm trying to do 4.0 of masculinity, where the 1.0 is just being awoken. So I think it is about patience. I think it is about consistency. But I think there's just got to be a graduation. I think and this is something for me personally, where I was in therapy 3 years before I started Dope Black Dads. I had answered questions that I needed to answer before I'd even started. So I shared my gift of awareness when I started from where I was. People started walking into their own journeys of I'm gonna go to therapy. Then that spreads that to the next journey. But then now I had a bigger question. So 2021 is my next question. I go away and now I have my answer on that question. But then I'm in a completely different work stream to the people that have just arrived today who were like, oh, there's a group. And so I may not be the best barometer for where men and fathers are at today. And so I think it has to be handed on to other people to be on the front line, sharing their story, because your story now, like you saying you haven't cried for 2 years, is I cry probably twice a week, 3 times a week. My daughter makes every time. It just gets me.
Do you cry? Do you cry when you're happy? Do you cry
all the time? It could be any emotion. I think yesterday we were talking about doing this podcast, and you were talking about Wandili, and I started welling up. I'm like, yo, because I remember what it felt. I remember how we all interacted at that time, and his passing sucked the energy out of everything that was happening. Right. We were actually very happy previously. We were all together. We were in Parkhurst, and we were hanging out. Masito was here. We were having an amazing time. We were laughing, meeting up, and then that happened, and I didn't care about anything anymore. I just remember I didn't even know him, but the way it felt, I didn't want to do anything else. And I'm saying, that journey of going from crying to every day, or whenever my daughter just does something incredible, and I'm like, you're gonna help us in the future. You're incredible. I'm excited compared to 2 years, but now you're probably doing it more. And so all of those journeys, I think we have that in us, and we've got to honor that and be like, actually, it's a graduation. And if we're being long life, consistent partners to men on their journey, we have to accept that it will always be a conveyor belt. But we need spaces where I'm advanced, and I've been not even advanced, but I'm further along in my journey, and I have a different conversation to, I just started out today, to I've never even heard of therapy. What do you mean therapy? What does that mean? That person and I will not see the world the same. And so that's maybe something that we can consciously create, is how to demark people in their different parts of their journey.
Even things like therapy, it's still happening in a very generalist sense. People are talking about therapy generally. There's 10 different types of therapy as well. So we haven't even gotten to the point where we're speaking about different types of therapy. We're just speaking about therapy. As a general thing. Yeah. Sorry, Kagiso, you were saying?
So the therapy that comes, there's the formal therapy and there's the non-formal therapy. Fathers with daughters, it's their daughters that introduce the therapy. Because if you grow up from a house that has a co-het gender, your behavior towards life becomes different than where a house that is full of a father who's got 3 boys. He wouldn't know how to handle a girl child or not, or the boys would not know that they got to share. So those fathers with daughters, then they start saying, how did my father-in-law, now the father-in-law becomes the therapy session of saying, your princess becomes this. So that's where we, as this masculinity, the therapy that you're talking about, it starts crumbling from the father that you fear. Remember when you meet this guy's daughter, you fear him. He's just that wild lion protecting, and you see him melt around his daughter. So cohesively, you're trying to say, what can I learn from the man that raised this woman I love, this woman that I get to be vulnerable with, and how does he say yes and no and still get a hug with a smile?
Non-formal therapy, that is incredible. I love that.
Can we just quickly close with like just a simple tip on how you deal with loss, or how you have dealt with loss, or how you would advise now upon reflection?
Be silent, cry, and cry out for help. So that's what people will know that you're suffering.
Really?
I'm the worst person to take advice from, but I did cry a lot because of Wandi, but also because just 2021 was just a year of immense loss. But I found that the t-shirt project also helped me with Wandi's loss. Like we doing the Wandi t-shirts, that not to say like I kept him alive, but it was something I could sink my teeth into that just helped me. So I think like mourn and cry, but I think some kind of like a project, something that you could do to honor the person. I just found that worked really well for me, and we're moving into the second phase of the project, and it just makes me feel so connected to him. So I think some kind of like physical way, some physical marker, I think that works so often.
I think the guys have obviously mentioned some of the basic things that you can do. Obviously, dealing with your emotions head on. Cry, take the time to actually mourn. But I also think that never forget to show up for those that were close to a person that you care about.
We will speak on that more, because I think that's important.
So I think a lot of people tend to sort of forget those that are left behind, because they have a bigger burden to bear. So I think show up for them.
Powerful. Brother, thank you so much. Very much appreciate it. Thank you for coming through. I'm going to leave you guys to do these next ones on your own, but afterwards, but like in the future weeks, because I think these conversations are fundamentally important and they're not happening enough. But thank you all. Very much appreciate it.